In the meantime, Nick is going to share his findings from the Digital Agencies and AI report. We've been digging in a lot to AI. We've got an AI in your agency event in Philly next month or October. We're going to be doing a panel where we're bringing some of the smarter people together that we know, just so we can figure out what are the tools, what are the toys, what should we be focused on, that sort of thing. And that's what I'm excited about today's presentation. I saw Nick give a version of this earlier. I think this one's going to have a whole lot more meat to it. Am I correct, Nick?
It's dense. Let's put it that way. So I'm gonna make it as light as possible today, and everybody can have their chance to dig into it as deep
Okay,
as they
because I
want
have,
later.
I'll kick you out of here and I'll just talk. I don't care.
There we go. Can you just do
That's
the presentation?
That's how we do it. Okay, in that case, you can stay. And with that, I just want to thank our friends at Parallax real quick. They help us make all of this possible. Next year, we're going to have over 100 events. When you look at the online and the in-person, yes, I am ridiculous, but it's getting everybody what they need. And we got a lot of different folks with different roles and different goals. So that's what we're going to do. Hey, I like that. That rhymed. And with that, I am going to unspotlight myself, mute myself, and turn it over to the one and only Nick Petrosky. Get it, Nick?
Thanks so much, Carl. Appreciate it. And I want to say thank you to Carl first because I shot him a message, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago and said, hey, I got this report and I don't know how to do a Q&A thing. I'm not a digital meeting mastermind. Can you help out with this? And he's like, yeah, sure, whatever you need. It was very nice because without him, this would have gone this would go much less smoothly if I'm trying to run it myself. So thank you, Carl. A little bit about me. I'm sure almost all of you know me, know who I am, know what I do. But for those that don't, I'm Nick. I run Promethean Research. We do a bunch of research on digital agencies. It's been almost 9 years now that I've been doing this, which is a little like puts a lump in my throat to say because I didn't realize time went by that fast. But we do a bunch of research into digital agencies, and that research results in us doing really high quality strategy work, and that's solving things like what kind of pricing methodology should you use, what kind of growth strategy makes sense for your shop, and I think I'm a little biased, but I think we do a pretty good job of that kind of stuff. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and we can jump into some of the highlights from the report. And the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to run through some stuff that I jumped out to me, or stuff I want to add more context to that's in the report. And what that'll do is that'll give us a kind of an overview before we jump into a Q&A session. And I want to make sure I leave, enough time to dig into some of the questions we have. So right off the bat, this report is a culmination of 3 surveys. We had 268 responses. And of those responses, 95% were leaders at digital agencies. So either owners, founders, CEOs, directors, that kind of stuff. So this is really a high level kind of leadership view. This isn't an in the trenches tactical view. So this whole report, the idea of it is to give you a better sense of how leaders are thinking about AI and what they're doing with it. After I've had these conversations, because we did a bunch of interviews for this as well, I think there may be an implementation guide coming, but that's going to be a hell of a lot of work, and I don't know if I really want to do it. But if there's enough demand, we'll get into an implementation guide a little later. So I also wanted to thank Sarah and Adam and JP and Dale and Wayne. They pitched in. I shot them a early draft of the thing, and I was like, "Hey, you're doing cool stuff with AI. I've seen stuff you've posted. Would you mind jumping in and sharing some insights?" And they were gracious enough to add some stuff to this report where it gave such a like different nuanced perspective each time. And you'll see that throughout the thing. So I wanted to shout out them and give them a huge thanks for jumping in and doing that. So into the data, what you're all here for. Agencies are adopting AI incredibly quickly. We did our first survey in January, our second survey in April, and our third survey in July. Between in that time period, we've seen stuff go from 54% of agencies using some kind of AI tools in January to 89% in the July one, and that's just incredibly quick. This stuff is moving so fast, and it really seems like the tidal wave of AI has hit digital shops. And with that comes kind of a shift in expectations. So we asked, how do you expect this to, impact your agency, and how much? And back in the April survey, we had this kind of bell curve looking thing that skewed a little to the right. And by the time this July survey came around, expectations had shifted dramatically to the right. Massive impact, large impact. Those are 70% of the agencies are expecting it to have a really significant impact on their shops. I wanted to highlight this though, and I'm so thankful Sarah pointed this out and let us use this quote. She's talking about the adoption rates for very technical kind of content and copy, and in that, when it's a medical document, or when it's something that's life or death that can't have errors and omissions or hallucinations in it, you have to be significantly more careful. And I think this really highlights just how nuanced the adoption rates are based on the kind of specific work that you're doing and who your clients are. So I put this up front because I want to make sure we all understand that this is an overview. This is what the industry is doing. This isn't this isn't a guide for your specific shop, because it really is like the unique snowflake thing. That's very true in this sense. Every shop is going to be different based on the type of work you do and who you do it for. Next up, higher performing agencies, so ones with better metrics, they had more positive expectations. I term this the luxury of experimentation. So if you have the ability and you're running a shop that's doing better, that's easier to manage, you can take more bets, you can experiment a little more, you can do more interesting things with AI, and not be afraid, not have it have to work. And we're seeing that play out in the data. Those with those more advanced agencies, they're definitely more optimistic about the impact of AI. And then we get into positive, negative connotation on those expectations. And again, here we found, how we asked how aware shops were, how much do they know about AI, and the ones that were more aware are expecting significantly larger impacts. If they are right, and if those impacts are more positive and larger, you're going to see a divide. You're going to see the agencies that maybe struggled a little bit early on, that didn't get as hyped about this. Maybe some are overhyped, but you're going to see those that didn't get as hyped about this not implemented as quickly. And then the gains that you're going to see later on in the report won't be as available to them as quickly as as they are to the other agencies that adopted it more quickly, that were more aware about what it could do. I don't want you to feel bad if you feel like you're a little bit behind them, because the average agency leader feels like their shop is a bit behind in awareness than average. So everybody's feeling kind of like, oh man, this fire hose of new tools they can't keep up with. None of us can. It's crazy how quickly this stuff changes. This kind of highlighted one of the major takeaways of the survey, and what that is the importance of pushing experimentation to the edges of your agency. Your team, and I think I'm going to talk about this later, but I'm going to do it early now. Your team that is on the front lines, that's doing those process innovations, they're the ones that need to be experimenting with this stuff. they're the ones that are going to be able to really easily see, okay, I do this way. This is my workflow. Um, where can I slot AI in to make this better, faster, or whatever? Um, and one of the things we found in this survey was that, you know, most agency leaders said they know more, or they're more familiar with what AI can do than their team is, and that needs to reverse. We need to find a way to educate the team and keep them updated, and make sure that they don't have to, you know, read 30 newsletters a day with the 10 latest tools each, to stay updated. But we do need to start thinking about the systems that we use in these agencies to keep people up on these trends. And this is right in line with that, and kind of sobering, because only a fifth of the agency owners said that they had any kind of formal structure for keeping their team updated on AI. You know, we had another quarter that's working on it, but the number that know and don't plan to, at 12%, and the ones that haven't started working on something like this, like these systems don't have to be crazy complicated. You know, they could be something as easy as you know, show and tell meetings, some kind of like dedicated Slack channel for it. Like this can be simple stuff. It doesn't have to be a big lift. But getting that right and building that, you know, ability to identify trends and, you know, analyze if it's something worthwhile. Building that DNA, or into your DNA, is critical. Next, I'm going to dive into some of the implementation heat maps that we did, and these are basically showing, you know, when it's a darker color, more agencies reported being at that stage for that function. So that in account management, no one, you know, everyone's unsure, or they don't plan to implement AI tools. That's kind of scary. A little bit of this is, you know, due to the tool maturity and how good they are and when they came out, right? You had marketing and sales tools, copywriting and sales tools, that designed AI into them like a year and a half ago at this point. So they're more mature than something like an account management, you know, process that I don't know if I've seen any dedicated account management software or platform or anything like that you know, leads with AI. So a bit of this is due to, you know, the tool maturity, but there's also a heck of an opportunity here to use some of those other tools, you know, something as simple as a ChatGPT, to build out your account management processes and make them more efficient. On the value delivery, so this was interesting that marketing for clients was further along. More agencies are doing AI marketing for client work and value delivery than they are for their own internal marketing. And this goes back to one of the issues that so many shops have with doing their own sales and marketing and spending time on it. It just gets pushed to the back burner. But there's also a hint of experimentation on clients before they try it out on their own shops, and that's something that that I heard from a few people, and it's interesting because they do have the ability to work so many experiments at once on different clients, and then figure out, like, we're in this stage of very few people know what works. Like, the best practices are changing fairly quickly. So being able to figure that out and then bring what works in-house and do it for yourself, that's a very interesting opportunity. So this was Dale's quote. He said that today they're able to cut the time required to produce videos in half, using AI tools. And we dig into some of the impacts that AI is having a little bit later, but this is a really good kind of like gut punch for people, for some people that I've seen that have gone, well, we don't get much out of it right now. There are some very unique cases and some very interesting cases where you can double productivity, and that's saying it's a game changer is almost like too light of a phrase for it. And then JP, with, we're witnessing a shift towards AI enabled productivity that may slow new hires. Increasing productivity without headcount is obviously very interesting, but I have seen reports where you're seeing the work that people are working on is solving the more difficult challenges. They can push the easy stuff onto AI, and then what they're left with are the items and the tasks that take a lot of thought. And some people are reporting a little bit of burnout based on they don't have that like downtime of just moving pixels around a little bit, or doing something that's less intellectually demanding to break up the day. So I think we're going to see a bit of a limit that's maybe a little lower than what we would expect, just because people are going to get mentally fatigued more easily if they're working on solving harder stuff constantly throughout the day. For ops stuff, it's really new. Like there's very few shops integrating any kind of AI into their operations. Um, the it makes sense in a way, because if you look at the cost of goods sold versus OpEx costs, your cost of goods sold are twice what your OpEx are. So if you can build this into value delivery and build this into OpEx and realize efficiency gains there, that's more valuable than doing it in OpEx and in operations costs. But there's still, as you'll see later, there's still a ton of value in making sure that your OpEx runs efficiently and runs well. This was interesting. It was a great perspective, and it was just a chat we were having, and Adam had provided some other quotes, and I was like, dude, we have to include this. Like this is exactly what we're trying to convey, is just how mundane AI is becoming and how quickly it's becoming mundane. It's being built into everything, and it's happening quickly. He went on to say, ask somebody to explain how the blockchain works, and then ask them to explain AI, and how much easier of a concept it is. And I think this really cuts to the heart of why adoption speeds have been so quick. Yeah, you have the productivity gains and the cool stuff that it can do, but it's also simpler to understand. It's simpler to convey. And then this, I just thought this was cool. this is what people are actually using. If you see those market maps that look daunting, where there's 10,000 different logos on them, it's hard to parse that and kind of understand what's actually going to move the needle, what matters, what tools should you even look at. And so I took what people reported actually using and what they used it for, and created kind of a distilled down market map to what's actually happening and what people are actually using. And so these are all clickable links in the report, and you can run through and check those out. Most of them are household names at this point. Now we're getting into the productivity improvements. So half of the agencies almost have seen some kind of productivity improvement. This surprised me, because if you think back to those integration heat maps, we're at the early innings. We're at the very early innings of this, and we have not figured out the most efficient way to use it, and we haven't figured out even where to use it in a lot of cases. And to see productivity gains from almost half of the agencies surveyed already was incredibly surprising. It makes me think that there's a lot of room to run in, as far as what we can actually achieve with this stuff. And this is a more fine-grained look at what those productivity gains are. And so 60% or 59% said they fell in that 0 to 24% range. That makes sense. Like I said, we're at the early innings. But 41% saw improvements at 25% or more. This really makes me think that as we get settled into, as best practices get discovered and implemented, we're going to settle into something above 25% on the productivity gains. And you'll let me get to it. You'll see why that's important. First up, Wayne. He's seeing some limited gains on that value delivery side, but he's also seeing significant gains on the strategy and ops side. I love this because it shows how fragmented all of this is right now. Like if we are going to settle into something above 25% productivity gains, we have a lot of work to do in the discovery and experimentation stage to figure out what those best practices are and what those workflows look like. And this highlights it perfectly. And so getting into what those translate to, what does a 20% productivity improvement or a 30% productivity improvement translate to as far as your margin profiles? And this is a sensitivity analysis we did on what the standard margin profile looks like and how it is impacted when you see various productivity gains. And what it comes down to is a 2 to 3x margin uplift in net margin. And that's I struggled with publishing that because I went back and I checked it like 10 times because I didn't believe it. We see shops fighting over 2 and 3% margin gains, and to see something go 2 to 3x is shocking. But the math checks out. So as we think about integrating this kind of stuff, the number of options and what it lets your agency do is going to be impacted significantly by AI. And one thing this makes me think is that down the road, not every agency, I don't see this lifting the average agency margin to say 36%. You're going to have shops that are very comfortable and happy in the 15% margin range, what it has been historically. And I think that this is going to create an environment that makes it very easy to say, oh, I'm going to compete on price. I'm happy with my 15% margin. Let's knock pricing down and let's take some market share. Let's grab some more clients. And the ones that get to that more quickly, I still know agencies that haven't raised prices in the last 2 years. It's, I was beating that drum for 2 years. And when they run up against these shops that are cutting pricing, but they can maintain their margin, and these shops over here didn't raise pricing, and if they don't figure out this AI thing, they're going to be running on break-even margins while these guys are over here at 15% and they have similar pricing. And it's going to make a lot of challenges. So I think this stat isn't necessarily go implement AI and all of a sudden your margins are going to jump 2 and 3x. It's a warning saying, okay, some will, and so figure out a way to prep your shops for that, because it's coming. In a lot of cases, it's already here. And this is the last highlight. I guess I just said that. It is here. It's not on the horizon. There are shops that are already realizing some of these gains, and I really hope your takeaway is, there's an opportunity here. We're at the early innings, but there's some education stuff that needs to happen, and as long as that happens, and you stay more in the driver's seat of this trend, you're making decisions and you're taking action rather than letting this happen and just reacting to it. If you stay in the driver's seat with this, I really think a lot of you will be okay, and you'll come out of this fantastically. If you take a wait and see approach, which a lot of shops are, that approach isn't going to work any longer. That's kind of over now. So stay in the driver's seat, build out some education systems for your team, and there's some legitimate gains that you can realize from this whole thing. And with that, I think Carl's been collecting questions. So if I want to open the floor to any kind of Q&A, we'll take the last half hour or so to just kind of chat through whatever you guys are thinking.
Yeah, sounds good, Nick. Let me go ahead and bring myself up here. Feel free to raise your virtual hand if you want. That's under your reactions. We've also got the Q&A. Nick, we've had some stuff going on. Hold on just a second. Let me bring myself up here. We've had some good stuff going on in the chat, but first I want to go ahead and get to Andy. Andy, raise your hand. If you want to be on screen, leave your video on. And if you just want to use audio, just have your camera off. We'll do it that way. And take it away, Andy. Oh, muted.
I fully resonate with everybody's comments. I have a lot of hesitancy on my team and a lot of people who are just don't know sort of where we stand. And so I actually think there's a lot of folks using tools, but don't want to talk about it publicly because they think they're somehow cheating. And so I have, the only thing that I've done as a leader is sort of set these standing meetings every 2 weeks with different leadership departments to kind of talk about how they're using it, what they're doing, if we discovered anything new. I would love to learn from other people here. Like that education piece and the fact that I know more than they do is greatly concerning to me, but it's also, I guess, identifies something that's been an issue of mine forever running an agency. This just feels like a place where it's worth solving. So if anybody, I would love to learn like how other people are solving this and sort of moving these tools down and knowing when to commit to them. I think I must have 40 subscriptions or signed up for at this point. So it's like, how do you know this is the one we're all going in on? And then, how are you sharing all that with your teams?
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. If anybody has tools that they've gone all in on or has ways that they're introducing tools, because I think I put it in the chat, change management is a huge part of this. That would be awesome. Feel free to
So I just dropped it into chat. I did a little work on that, just grabbing what people are doing. And that's from a recent blog post or a newsletter post I sent out, showing like how shops are keeping their teams updated. And one of the big ways is it's just lightning talks. That was one of the most fascinating ways I saw, was just having people like, number one, obviously create that environment where they are comfortable and interested to share what they're experimenting with, and they don't see it as like, oh no, I'm cheating at my job. So once you create that environment, having them just show what they've been working on, it sparks conversation and it sparks ideas throughout your entire organization. And obviously keep it short. Like don't have 30 lightning talks at each meeting or something crazy like that. But that was a big one. Similarly, the show and tell meetings, those are a little longer form. And then dedicated Slack channels. Something like that, like it can easily turn into the lazier employees just dumping whatever sounds fancy into the Slack channel. But if you require some piece of thought to go along with it, you say, okay, you have to have an opinion on what you toss in here. That can get rid of a lot of that.
Awesome. All right. Let's see here. Who else? Anybody else have questions? I'll say that one of the conversations we're gonna be having, we're gonna be doing camp sessions at the AI in Your Agency event in Philly, where basically everybody's just talking about where they are, struggles they've had, that sort of thing. So I'm excited to have those conversations, and we're working on a panel as well for September 12th that hopefully will allow us to get into that. But anybody else, questions, other things like that? We got a question in the Q&A. Let's see here. All right, we have a question from Sarah. I'm curious how digital agencies typically compare to other agencies in terms of early adoption and what that may mean for AI. In other words, is it fair to say that other types of agencies are likely to lag behind? And I would guess like more traditional advertising agencies, that sort of thing. Historically, they've always been a little bit behind the curve there. What do you think, Nick?
Absolutely. I agree with that. It might have been 3 years ago now, but I had a shop that was just transforming from traditional ad stuff to digital as a client. And so you still have this stuff today where they're just finding out about websites, at least some of them are. So as far as AI implementation, that there's definitely a large group of them that are not going to know what it is.
There you go. All right. Looks like Aaron has a question for us.
Hey, gentlemen, always love your
Hey,
stuff as
Aaron.
always.
Good to see
Nick, question for you, sir. You had, I don't remember which slide it was, but you were talking about how there's been a huge increase since January of people using AI. Do you have any, like, is that all Chat GPT and people just jumping on the bandwagon, or do you know if it's beyond that? Because
It's
I feel
beyond
like,
that.
okay.
Yeah. That's the base, obviously. There are a lot of shops just using the Chat GPT stuff. And that's enough for a lot of them, right? With Code Interpreter and with the stuff it can do around that, that's plenty. But there were a lot already in January, in the January survey, that had a ton of other tools that they were using along with ChatGPT. So it's really like whatever I don't know if it will, but whatever the tech stack shakes out to actually being, I think ChatGPT, GitHub Copilot, those are going to anchor it. And then you're going to have some, bolt-on tools that do very specific stuff based on whatever your service offering or client needs are.
Yeah, I kind of feel like all of our collective jobs here is just to stay one step ahead of our clients. And as long as we're doing that, we're all going to be fine, right?
Yeah. I wrote that recently, like understanding where you live in like how close to the edge you live. And yeah, you definitely, at least the good ones will stay a step ahead of their clients.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
No, that's definitely a big part of it. Thanks, Aaron. I will say that JP Holika, who you had a shout out from, and he's part of the event we're doing in Philly. He is actively going through working on all these tools, figuring out how they work together. He has for the Bureau Buddies, which is kind of our onboarding welcome to the Bureau group that's forming. He took some calls that were had, fed the transcript into a tool that would be able to get it into small enough chunks to get it into Chat GPT, that then took it and was able to make a report that was designed by generative AI. And the whole thing took him like 30 minutes. And it was something I had wanted to do with another project for weeks, but was terrified to get started because it was going to suck a day and a half away from my life. And when he showed me how he did it, I did it yesterday in like 45 minutes. I got to go in and clean it up. Right? Like it's not perfect, but man, right now it's a 2-hour project. Before it was going to be a day and a half at least. So these are the things that kind of get me excited.
Absolutely. Those kind of stories of like, not necessarily just what tools are you using, but what's the workflow and what's the process? Like that's more valuable in my opinion. And I think that's what that implementation guide is going to look like and dive into a little bit, because it's hard to say like, oh, just use Chat GPT. Well, that's nice, right? If you don't know the process and how to use it, that you have to prompt it like 7 times because it's going to turn out trash.
Yeah. I mean, that's where these prompt engineers, and we kind of scoff at it a little bit, but they're going to be people who, when they show up to a job, their toolkit is already having these prompts done. They know the right things to ask. And that's where it's going to get, just really fine tuned for them. We have another question that came in the Q&A from Chelsea. Let's see here. One of our core offerings is writing content as part of our SEO strategy. More clients are asking us if they can write the content with AI and have us optimize it. We have concerns about ranking and content quality with AI, but no pricing is important to clients. So we're trying to plan how to integrate AI, but keep quality and rankings. Have shops handled this just by experimenting? Did it affect your pricing?
I have seen, or I've heard of some shops having pricing pushback already from clients based on them saying, oh, you can just have AI do this. If you can't have AI do this, we're not going to pay you at all. And we're just going to take this in house. I liken it to any kind of new tech or any kind of new, like take SEO updates, for example, like when Google changes the algorithm or something and they do a big announcement about it, or your client will come to you and say, oh, well, I can do this, this, and this, or I'm going to use this strategy. I'm going to stuff this thing full of keywords because that's what I read on this blog post to do. and you look at them and you're like, oh my God, you're going to kill your SEO. You're going to destroy it. Or they're going to do something silly technically where they're going to just remove all H2 tags or something stupid because they don't like the look of them. It's really a conversation around, it's shifting the conversation from tactically how you do what you do to the results you get for your client, and understanding that like they're paying you for the value you create for them. They're not paying you to rank higher in SEO. They're paying you for the extra revenue that gets them. If you can have that conversation and push that harder, you're going to have, it's going to turn out better. That said, you do need objection handling in place for a lot of these because it's going to come up. It's already coming up.
Well, and it's interesting. So years ago, I gave a talk on resistance to new technology, and examples are like electricity versus steam, right? Like steam was a perfectly good technology. It's never going to get replaced. Electricity is dangerous. I think we saw who won. Another one is looking at surgeons. Before anesthesia, speed was the #1 requirement for a good surgeon. When anesthesia comes in, it becomes precision, right? They no longer have to go so fast. They don't have to worry as much. We've always had this resistance. And so I think, especially for those who are the producers, it's the biggest challenge. Much like photographers, when suddenly everybody had a really good camera in their pocket, writers are feeling that pressure, developers are feeling that pressure, designers are feeling that pressure. So yeah, I think a lot of it's going to be realizing and getting to a point where it's a tool you can use, not a challenge or something to be afraid of. But
Yeah,
that
that's a
said,
fantastic
a lot of
point.
stuff going on in other industries, like dietitians are making mistakes. It's like, so it's not there yet. Oh, all right, let's see. Going back here. All right, so Alina had something she put in here I think you should probably address, Nicholas. I'm
Yeah.
having a hard time understanding how it can improve margins for a T&M shop other than asking internal folks to just do more via improved productivity so that we need less people in the cost center. That's a great question.
Yeah, for TNM, it's going to have less of an impact because it'll increase revenue growth, or the amount of revenue your rev per FTE will go up, probably by those similar percentages or by that multiplier. It won't have that kind of effect on your margins, unless you switch to some kind of like project based or value based or
Yeah.
a different kind of billing method that lets you earn based on being more productive. That's one of the reasons I don't love TNM.
Well, and as a TNM, I can't even say it. You got
Team
me so worked
TNM.
up, I can't even say it. Yeah, time and materials has so much benefit. I think one of the things, just like Squarespace was supposed to kill time and materials, but instead we just changed what it was we delivered. We changed how it was we worked. There were times that we finally found that tool to be useful. I think what it means is that in TNM, we're going to get back to the strategic part is more important than the execution part, and I think that's what's going to end up happening. It's probably going to change our companies over the next 10 years, not just as a matter of survival but kind of evolution of what it is we do.
Yeah, I agree with that. Pushing to the strategy side is a shift that we've seen a lot of shops take anyway, not just TNM ones, but like just over the course of the last 5 years. We get so many more inquiries about how do I sell strategy versus just the whatever it is.
Yeah. Alina, I saw that you unmuted. Did you have something you want to say?
Um, I just gave myself the opportunity, but I didn't really have anything to say. I guess like I'm just trying to wrap my head around what's like selling more of the strategic part, but then maybe you answered it like selling the strategy work itself. Nicholas, did you say that in a T&M environment, you still would have more revenue per FTE?
Yeah, it will eventually let you do, say you get double productivity. You can service the same amount of revenue with half the employees, or you could service double that revenue with the same, or with whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it only makes sense. Like we make money by billing an hour, so that only makes sense for people who are in the cost center so that they're basically doing double the work for the same salary versus people who are billable to the client. Like when you bill an hour, you make a dollar. So by doing more within that hour doesn't like increase the revenue for us, based on how we're structured right now.
Gotcha.
I think maybe the expectations at some point from the client might change, and people are starting to talk about that, like, you know, folks saying, hey, I want it now and use AI, make it faster. So the scope might actually change of the work and what they're expecting us to deliver within the amount of time. But from just a pure revenue perspective, I think you hit it, like that T&M is just, it's going to be a slightly different animal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you have this thing where you're going to see, if you can be twice as productive, you are going to see project timelines compress, because they're going to expect you to be able to do twice as much or whatever it is.
Right.
And I think that's what I was trying to say, is you're going to have that kind of pressure. And then if you compress timelines, say you compress them 50%, you're going to be able to do more revenue and service more clients throughout a year than you would previously.
Yeah, and Jason just put this in the chat. Might have to raise rates by that 20 to 30% of extra productivity, and I think that's going to happen, right? I mean, hours are value based. We all have a different hourly rate. If you really look at it, I've made this argument, and I've taken a few lumps, but I honestly believe that even if you're value based, right, you're still need to keep up with time. You need to understand, you track your time, you bill your value, all that stuff's great, but hourly rates can change.
Mhm.
And I think for those that are really good and can get somebody to market faster, getting to market faster for a lot of our clients is more important than necessarily the cost. I know it's all depends on the clients you have, but I think we'll see the clients we have change as well.
Yeah, totally agree.
All right, let's see here. I'm coming back up and just checking the chat. I know we're coming up, getting a little closer to the hour. Any other questions? Anybody else have something they want to throw out here? Also, Nick is in, he is a member of the community, so you can always hit him up in Slack as well. And Nick, we need to get the report out to everybody, I think.
Yeah. So what I want to do is am I able to send this out to everyone who's here? How's that work?
Well, I've replaced you with AI, unfortunately, and it's already said that it's done.
Ooh,
So,
sweet.
yeah.
I don't have to do anything.
No, actually, a lot of people don't know that Nick is AI now, and that's why the beard fell off. We weren't able to keep the beard on. It was
Robots can't grow beards.
all
It's a fact.
right. Well, I'm gonna give it a little going once, going twice. I'm going to thank Mr. Nicholas Petrotsky. I can't say your last name today, dude.
It's okay. It's hard.
I'm so sorry, Petrotsky. I got it. Okay, I have to say it quietly with the emotions that I do feel for you. So thanks everybody for being here. You got a little bit of time. I suggest you take a walk or go sit in a room and just breathe a little bit. Don't jump right into the next thing. That's not what getting a little extra time is about.